my good friend. It's so good to see you. It's been so long. It's been 7 days. I've missed you. Hello.
Oh man,
How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you? I've missed you too, dude. And it's been 7 days, man. It's been a hot minute since we've chatted.
That's right. But here we are again at our headquarters, Black Rifle. So Black Rifle, thank you so much for allowing us the space to be able to sit here and have these meaningful conversations. I appreciate you. Aum was on episode 9 of the Phase 1 podcast, and we had a very meaningful conversation. We got to hear your story, your mission, as well as your message. And when you were sharing your mission, you broke that down into 3 different pillars. The first pillar is giving back to the community. And the community that you give back to is Richstone Family Center. Now, we're going to spend the time that we have today talking about what Richstone Family Center is, and Aum is going to share his involvement with that community. Not only that, but he also mentioned pushing personal limits. And the last thing that he mentioned for his mission was leaving a legacy behind, understanding our specific role in humanity and playing our part and giving back to the community. So I'm really happy to sit here again and allow you the space for you to educate us on Richstone Family Center, your involvement, and what we can do to support. So I appreciate you. And with that, welcome back to the Phase 1 podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping you navigate the challenges of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. I'm your host, John Fischer, and together, we'll explore the paths to healing and growth through inspiring conversations with individuals who volunteer for discomfort, who embrace life's toughest lessons to become stronger and more resilient. My mission is to reach out to those who are hurting and provide the encouragement and inspiration needed to endure your own journey. This is the Phase 1 podcast.
An honor to be back on the show, and I'm excited to talk about what drives me out on the trail. And I think a good place to start is I knew that since we were going to make this the topic, I wanted to really drive home like why this is important to me. First off, Richstone Family Center is a nonprofit organization in Hawthorne, California. They're a daycare center. They offer services for the parents for counseling. They offer services for the kids as far as like daycare center, like after school club, giving them a sense of community. And Richstone is what I would describe as a safe haven in a community in LA that is otherwise riddled with depression, with uh, gangs, with substance abuse. And it is a very low income bracket area. And so the driving force behind what Richstone does is to prevent and treat child abuse, to end domestic violence. But what they're doing is not just like nipping it in the bud. They're not just like we're just gonna separate these kids from their families. Their mission is to actually work with and adopt entire families. So the understanding of what Richstone does comes from the fact that it's not just the kids that are going through abuse and their cycles of abuse, it's the parents who are fighting their own generational trauma as well. So it's about like I would akin it to like a tree with like deeply rooted branches. You're trying, as each generation passes, you've got more and more of the roots coming out from the tree, or more and more of the chains being broken, I should say. But it becomes a generational struggle, and it becomes impossible to break that cycle if you're just focusing on one generation. So the idea of this is to not only help the kids but also help the parents and educate multiple generations so we can solve this issue and clean the slate and help them realize that they are also the victims of cycles that they're going through. Because as many things as I've been through, in terms of abuse, like I look back at my parents, I look back at my grandparents, and I think about like the extreme levels of abuse that they've been through that they need to reconcile as well. And so that's what made Richstone very near and dear to my heart. Now, my background with Richstone goes back to 2016 when I was still not a runner and I was actually a civil engineering student in college. And we worked on some engineering projects with these kids, discovered them back in 2016 when I was at Long Beach State University, and just fostered a relationship with the director, executive director, Allison Tanaka, and just a lot of the individuals who were there 8 years ago are still part of the staff. So, flash forward to my ultra running journey, as we talked about a bit on the last episode. I was doing my 72-hour race for across the years, my first multi-day race, and I wanted to find not only I'd already been running for charity for my other runs, and they were great charities. You know, we raised hot meals, money for hot meals for the homeless. We I did a run for COVID in India when it was hit hard in April of 2021, and I wanted to find a cause that I could fully align with, that I completely trusted, that I could carry over throughout the course of not just one ultra, but have continuity. And I realized that I had that continuity all along with this relationship that I'd continued to foster with Richstone. Now, I we can dive into this deeper too, but like I know the biggest thing with contributing to charities is, I'm going to be completely blunt and honest. There are charities out there that are definitely not genuine. Like, uh, not to call out names, but I'm not a big fan of Red Cross. I'm not a big fan of like Salvation Army. Like, I think there's too much red tape around those. And I'm very much about like doing your research. And for me, that's guidestar.org and Charity Navigator, to actually go and look at actual documentation of these charities. So for me, the biggest thing with Richstone was I wanted to have a deep trust level. So I went back to them and I told them I was doing this race. And we fostered a relationship since then, raised $2,500 for Richstone that first go around through the 72-hour race, and have raised about $15,000 since through multiple races. And yeah, that's been the relationship with Richstone since then. And that's just a little bit about what Richstone does.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And just to give people a little bit more of an understanding of the need for why Richstone Family Center exists, when it comes to numbers, what we need to understand is that every 10 seconds there is a report of child abuse. And every day there are 5 children that die as a result of child abuse. And child abuse affects more than 7.5 million children every year. Now we have the fundamental understanding of the need for this organization and why it exists to fulfill the mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are the most important statistics, and I firmly believe that if there was a charity like Richstone in every city in America, that was hands-on, on the ground, like these workers are, then I think that the U.S. would be a much better place, and kids would have more equal opportunities. And I think at the core of it, for me, it all comes down to giving tools to these kids and families that I myself and many others didn't have. Because to me, it's all about not only giving them that equal opportunity and that ability to go outside the box that they're in. Because when you're in situations of abuse, when you're in situations of poverty, when you're dealing with things like substance abuse and gangs, you get put into this box, and it's very easy to stay in that box and feel like that's where you're always going to be. And when I'm working with the older kids, like the kids who are in preteens, going in middle school, going into high school, like the biggest thing is always driving home that where you are is not where you're always going to be. And how you are right now, the state that you're in, what you're dealing with is not always how it's got to be. Like that's not your, like I should say that's not your destiny. That's not your fate. Like you can rewrite your story, and I think that that is a driving force behind what I do, because I want to show them that. And from the first conversation I had with them, when I talked to them, I was immediately open about, like, hey, these are cool pictures of me in action, but here are some trail nap photos. Here's me like vomiting on the side of the trail. Like, here's me like struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And then I dove into, like, yeah, I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
these things, but this is where I come from. This is what I dealt with whether it was mental health, whether it was obesity, whether it was poverty, abuse. And I didn't have to say, like, but I didn't have to give them tips on, like, well, this is how it's going to change. I just show them, like, this is where I was, and these are the things I'm doing now. And I just want them to know that whether it's a 200 miler or it's Everest or it's getting that degree or becoming a published author, whatever the dream is, like, that you shouldn't limit yourself. And I think that the core of this not only comes down to, like, you going back to those numbers, but also letting them know that, like, that I think just seeing human potential, right? Because uh, we were able, like, you and I toe the line of a 200 miler. We both dealt with abuse in our childhoods. We both didn't necessarily have the tools that we needed in our lives. So I think that for me, it's about, like, making sure that these kids and these families have those tools, because human potential can be amazing. And I'm always curious, like, if we were able to do this much by walking through these hoops and going through the fire, imagine what these kids and the next generation can do if they have the proper tools
Mm-hmm.
and the proper guidance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And with this, like, there are ways to contribute, there are ways to donate, and we can get into that for sure. But I know that you have a direct impact and a direct relationship with this organization. You want to get into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, I've had a relationship with Richstone since 2016. It started as, like, just special projects that I did with the full-time staff there, special projects I did with the kids in engineering, and now it's evolved into just a relationship of presence. I don't get to go there all the time, but I try to make, several times a year. I may try to be there a few times a quarter, and I just like to go and sit in the after school club. And sometimes it's giving a speech, other times I think it's just the act of being there. I think kids just want to know that you're there for them. The younger kids want to
Mm-hmm.
ask all the cool questions about, like, the jungle and, like, Mount Everest, and, like,
Mm-hmm.
how did you do 200 miles on your feet? And, like, I had one kid who's Pressy, who's near and dear to my heart, because as I was reading him a book called The Gruffalo, he was like, "Man, if you had the ability of flight, I'm sure you could do these 200-mile races even faster." I said, yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but and
That's
just
next.
and just like some of the cutest questions you get, like, how many gold medals do you have? And I jokingly, like, I lied. I told them how many buckles I have, but
All the buckles.
it always, and, like, just like their reality, like, I hope you win, and in my mind I'm like, we're all winners here, buddy, and just kind of joking about that. And so my presence at Richstone isn't just being like, it's not like being a motivational speaker like a Tim Grover, or like uh a Rich Roll, or anything like that. Like, I'll give speeches here and there, but I always keep it real. And it's just about, like, sitting there, and then next thing you know, I'm there for a minute and it's like, hey, you want to play freeze tag with us? Hey, you want to help me with my
Mm-hmm.
math homework? Do you want to watch this movie with us? Like we were watching Nightmare Before Christmas back in October. We've been having a little pizza party, and um,
Yeah.
I think it's just the act of being there. And it's also when I'm not able to be there, sharing as much as I can. Like I shared the videos of my finishes because for those of you who don't know, every single race that I've done this year for my 1,000 racing miles, including all the Triple Crown races, I made up my mind last year after having a conversation with the kids that I was not only going to finish with the Richstone flag, but I was going to make every finish a strong finish. And to me, there is a deep symbolization behind that, that no matter what obstacles you go through, no matter what fire you walk through, you can still shatter the glass ceiling and come out strong on the other side, which is why I like to show through action. Like I've been through this many days with minimal sleep. I've been through X, Y, and Z, but I'm still coming in for a strong finish, which to my shock, with when Regina told me what my splits were on the track, I was utterly shocked. I think it
Mm-hmm.
was like a 640 or something. Yeah.
Oh, brother, come on. I believe it. You got that fire in you.
But yeah, the kids saw that. They saw a little jump in everything I did, and they love it. And whenever
Mm-hmm.
it falls on a weekday or they're at home or whatever, they'll watch the little dot and everything like that. So I am always cognizant of that when I'm on the trail. Like,
Mm.
or like these kids are watching the dots, and like specific kids too. And just like random moments of vulnerability that I'll get. Man, I gave a speech at the last time I gave a speech at Richstone. I opened up about how I was bullied in my childhood, and a kid came up to me, 6 years old, after the conversation and opened up about being bullied. And another kid came up to me and said, "Can I just give you a hug? I need a hug."
Mm.
And to
Mm.
me, like the core of everything I do is not so much just about those strong finishes. It's about those moments, like being able to do that, being able to be that presence. And so I feel like that's sort of the role I've taken on. They'll call me the Richstone Family Champion. I don't know if I'd consider myself a champion, but I love the title of
Oh,
like, I'll take Richstone Family
oh, that's
Champion
sweet.
over World Champion or anything like that. To me, that's the
Mm-hmm.
greatest gift.
That's so sweet, man. Gosh, this really is just highlighting the power of presence and the impact that we get to have in the community that we are currently serving in and living in. And I knew that you had a really special story because I saw that you had this little stuffed animal with you. It was on your pack. So what's the story with that?
Oh, the stuffed animal, man. Oh, you mean the yak, or it's specifically the Highland
Yep.
cow is what they would call it, but that's
Oh,
the
okay.
that's a special that is the first child of me and my girlfriend. So um I that's there's a love story behind that. I met my
Oh.
girlfriend actually through the sport of ultra running. I knew her dad from Bigfoot back in 2022 and didn't even know he had a daughter. And then we started chatting back in May because I reached out to said friend as he was doing the Sedona 125 and wanted to just cheer for him as loud as he cheered for and supported me, as we do in this trail community. And um, we just started chatting as I went to go do this race in Nepal called the Everest Extreme Ultra, which is a whole nother story. It's a foot race in the Himalayas where I trekked up 12 days to base camp, stayed at base camp a couple nights, and then raced 45 miles down from Everest base camp to Namche Bazaar, which is the Sherpa capital. It took me 18 hours,
Mm.
but that
Mm.
having those conversations, kind of feeling like my love for her budding in that moment, kind of tied it all back into the adventures in Nepal and like this thing we joked about called yak trains, where you have the single track and you would hear the bells of the shepherd from like like a half a mile down or whatever like that, and you go, oh no, man, where am I going to get off on the trail over here? And it happened during the race 5 or 6 times. Like we joked about yak trains, and I just knew that when I asked her to be my girlfriend, I had to have a yak between us, and we call her Amma, female yak, named after Amadablam, which is the tallest freestanding mountain in Nepal in the Himalayas. It's extremely beautiful, and yeah, it's been a fixture in our relationship, and like my Triple Crown journey and all my 200 since then.
That is so cute. Oh, unexpected story. I wasn't expecting it, but I'm so glad you gave that to me. That is so stinking cute. Well, to rewind just a little bit, I wanted to give you the opportunity, if you're feeling up for it, if you could share the most impactful moment that you've had with the kids that you get to interact with.
Most impactful moment I had. Oh man, that's
Mm-hmm.
a easy one. Since last October, that's an easy one. So you've seen, if you go on my Instagram, you've seen the Richstone flag that I'm carrying around. That flag came to me as a complete surprise. That was not a plan. I had sort of heard some rumblings about that, but didn't know if anything was going to happen. And then when I went in October to after school club as normal, as I was getting up there to give my speech to the kids, three of the three of the kids came out, uh, including one of my favorites, Fatima. Shout out to Fatima. She is awesome, total sweetheart. They came
Mm-hmm.
out with the banner. It was a complete surprise, and the image of that, how they created it, was basically like the kids made handprints with paint. It was like a fun little activity for them, and they wrote inside it. So every single handprint you see there was from the kids who were at Richstone Family Center at that time in October. And it has like signatures from them, and it has things on there like "Good luck," "I hope you win," like "You're awesome," and like it's just all these individual handprints that I'm carrying around with me. And as a matter of fact, like even when I had crew at Tahoe, even in my other races, like, and even in the case of Bigfoot, that flag never leaves my pack. It always stays in my pack. Like I carry it with me, like I carry my heart or I carry my soul.
Yeah.
And when I was a mile out from that finish line, that was, as I was jogging, that was the only thing on my mind. I was like, Regina, we got to get this flag out right now. Um, because I knew that
Mm-hmm.
the finish, I wouldn't be able to fulfill my promise if I didn't have that strong finish with the flag. And to me, like, my girlfriend's dad put it best, but to me, I have to fully agree. Like, I have done 27 ultras. I have plenty of buckles to my name. Like, I could have a long-standing ultra career and go on to do so many amazing things. But I think when I'm on my deathbed, when I'm looking back, and we had that talk about giving it your all and leaving an impact in your legacy, I think that the thing I will be most proud of is that flag, because I don't do these things thinking that there's going to be a visible impact. Like I've given back, and I never expect anything in return. Like I've given back, and sometimes like people are unappreciative, or they don't understand it at the time, or you give back or you donate or something like that, and there's just no return. And I don't do this for a return. So for me, it was just a blessing to see a visual representation of impacting lives, because like all I want to know when I am on my deathbed is, did I change one life? Did I impact one life for the better? That's all I want to know. And so to me, getting that flag was my most memorable and impactful moment with the kids. And I guard that thing like I guard my life. I mean, that is my greatest treasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Before we were talking, or before we hit record, we were talking about those internal and external motivators. So it sounds like that flag is, well, it could be both. Like the physical flag in itself could be that external motive, but also, like you said, you hold that near and dear. You hold that to your core. That's close to your heart. So that ties into that internal motive to continue doing these epic feats that you volunteer for. And I think it's so important for people to understand that when you break the distractions of your life and you get on that single track trail, it's going to lead you to where you need to go. When you find your mission in life, you're unbreakable, you're unstoppable. The only thing that can stop you is your creator at that moment. But I strongly believe that once we find that mission, we're on it.
Yeah.
And that strong finish that you show when you cross that finish line, that's just a representation of life, like how you get to tackle life. And I think that it's so sweet that we got to sit here and talk about how you're getting out of your personal bubble, you're serving your community in the capacity that you can. And that is intentional relationships, and it's showing these children, showing these people the positive impact of presence. And I do think that that takes courage. It takes courage to step out of our comfort and to expose ourselves to this new environment where we could be vulnerable in ourselves, but the people that we get to interact with also could see that vulnerability, and we could share vulnerability together, and we can establish a relationship, and we can move forward towards having a healthier life together. We can share this adversity, share this vulnerability, and move forward together. I volunteered in my community as a young life leader. I did this for about a year or so, and I was terrified. Like, I've done hard things in my life. I've done military training for up to a year, going through survival training. I've done a few ultras. I was so nervous to go to this high school and show up to these high school students and try to serve them. But Young Life essentially is kind of like youth group, but not so much Jesus. Like, we're going to have fun, we're going to hang out, we're going to play games and do cool things. And then we're going to sprinkle a little Jesus at the end because we don't want to overwhelm them. You know what I mean? But I was so terrified to go there. And just to sum it up, the relationships that I was able to create from just being there, kind of like you were talking about, is just the power of presence. I was able to form really healthy relationships with people I thought didn't want anything to do with me. And a year and a half, 2 years later, I think, still maintaining those relationships to this day. But I do want us to recognize the courage that it takes for us to get outside of our comfort, find something that we are passionate about, find a community that we can serve, and figure out whatever that looks like for us, and just let that be our internal motive when we put ourselves on that mission. Does that make sense? I hope it does.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go on tangents, and it's just like it's in my core. Like, I'm taking in everything that you're saying, but I'm also seeing how this has a very positive impact to humanity.
Yeah, there's power in relationships, there's power in love and presence. And I think that having that, I think that fostering those relationships and knowing, knowing like names, knowing personalities, knowing individual struggles has a much stronger, creates more of an extrinsic factor when I'm out there, because internally, like, I am deeply driven by the desire to lift others up and also to just push my limits and break that glass ceiling and see what I'm capable of. But when you're out there in a 200, as you know, like, you'll be stripped raw, not once, not twice, but many times. And sometimes what you're feeling internally is not enough. If I'm being totally vulnerable and totally honest, like, and that's the whole point of doing these, right? Like, you break yourself down to the very core, and sometimes, like, you see parts of yourself that you're not particularly proud of. You get down to the ugly, and um, yeah, sometimes that internal stuff is just not enough. And that's where, like, that's where the drive to go up that hill or bomb down that downhill or shuffle the road and finish strong comes from that extrinsic factor. Because I remember, who else is watching? It's not just my eyes, it's not just the eyes of my friends, my family, and my loved ones. It's the eyes of the kids at Richstone Family. It's the eyes of the staff at Richstone, who I would honestly consider the real heroes, like, or the real champions, because they're the ones on the front lines doing the work. I'm there to support them and to help bring visibility to them, but I cannot stress enough how what the work that they're doing makes them truly heroes. And it drives me to push farther and push harder. And I think that a lot of that, like you said, comes from breaking out of that box and having the courage to go out and form bonds and form relationships. And I totally agree with you, man. Like, I've done some scary things in my life. And I think that there are two things that I would rank above any of the ultras I've done. A few of them which almost killed me, if I'm being honest. Like, I would say the two things I would rank above ultras for scariest things I've ever done. Well, let's make it three things. It is talking to, like, the kids at Richstone for the first time, and almost every time I feel a little bit nervous because I want to make sure that I have the right impact. Going to therapy, and three, saying the words "I need help." Those are the three
Mm-hmm.
things that I've found harder than any ultra I've ever done. And want to not only, and now that I think about it, I really want to stress that last one, especially, you know, since we in the last podcast talked about mental health, especially men's mental health, especially, and to put a bow around all this and tie it back into how it's all about support and relationships and helping through the power of presence, letting somebody know that you're not alone. Like, I cannot stress enough how powerful the words are and how hard it is to get those words out there for the first time, how much humility it takes to say, I need help. I can't do this alone. I need help.
Yeah, 1,000%. I'm really glad that you brought that up because what we're doing right now, really what we're having a conversation about, is raising awareness on vulnerable children who are a result of domestic abuse and violence and neglect. And the reality is that they need help. And maybe they are not in a position to ask for help. So for us, even for me, I completely resonate with what you're saying. I'm 32 years old. It's so challenging for me as an adult with a fully functioning brain, so they say, to ask for help. It's really challenging for me to do that. How much more challenging is it for a child who is subjected to domestic violence to ask for help? They may not have the means to do so. So if you are feeling called to help or contribute in some capacity to Richstone Family Center, go to richstonefamily.org. You can get a lot of good resources and a really good understanding of what they're about and what their mission is and how they're trying to help these children and families through healing, education, and prevention. But I would just like to encourage everyone, do some soul searching and figure out, like, where exactly are you in your community and what can you do to serve. A prerequisite is going to be fear. It should be, because it's an opportunity to lean into that vulnerability and help someone. If we lean into the courage that we are given to go and serve our community, the result is good. That's all. Good. Good things happen when you care about people. And that's the message. Just care more about other people than you do yourself and see what happens, man. It's a people helping people. It's so beautiful. And then maybe that's the mission in your life. Like, my mission in life, inspire and encourage. Like, that's it. Just, I'm on my mission. There's nothing that's going to stop me. The only thing that's going to stop me is my creator, God. But I finally figured out what I'm doing with my life. Inspire, encourage, period. Maybe the people I get to inspire are children who are hurting. Maybe it's someone walking down the street. Have a conversation with them. Give someone a hug. Just be the person that we want to be. Be the person that we would want someone to be to us. Think about the ripple effect to just being a good person.
Yeah.
I've had a great time talking with you, It's been so sweet. We were talking before we hit record, and gosh, man, we could have just hit record from the very beginning because there's so many sweet things we could talk about. But I do just want to show you love, man. So grateful that we met on that trail. I'm so grateful that we've had this time to have these meaningful conversations. But you're a few weeks out from Moab 240.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
It's
coming.
coming in hot, man. I
And
got
yeah,
It'll be 5 weeks from Friday, actually. So yeah, it's October
yeah,
11th. So we're getting in on, yeah, I think just about 5 weeks now.
yeah. And you're talking about internal and external motivation. I know you've got it in there. You've got that fire in your soul, and you know that I'm supporting you all the way, 100%, brother.
Appreciate it, man. And I'm ready to go out there and finish the Triple Crown strong and just empty that tank, not just for me, but as my mantra goes, for the kids.
Yeah. And as you empty the tank, it may fill up with compassion. It may fill up with something good, man. There's people out there that love you and support you. And when you're feeling alone, like you're talking about before, you're never alone. You're in solitude, but you're not in isolation. And you've got so many people that are looking up to you. You've got children. You have children that are looking up to you that are going to see you break past those barriers. You think about the ripple effect that creates on them as a child when they don't have that person showing them what that could look like. You're that person to them. You have no idea the positive impact that you can make on those children. So I'm grateful that there are brave people, courageous people who love people and serve in whatever capacity they can. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, man.
I appreciate you.
Black Rifle, thank you again.
I appreciate you for taking the time. And if I can say one more thing, it's that, we grow into the heroes that we needed when we were younger. And I don't want to
Mm,
be the hero for those kids at Richstone. I don't even think I'm a hero. I want them to become the heroes that they need and become their own superheroes, because every single kid is capable of it. They just need the power of presence and the right tools, and just to know that they're not alone. And the
mhm.
potential for me might be what it is, but the potential for them is sky high.
Yeah. And that's how we wrap up this episode of the Phase One podcast. Thanks for spending time with me, brother. Peace and love. Keep it
Peace
real.
and love, man. Thanks for having me.
Always. Till next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Phase One podcast. I hope that you gained inspiration and encouragement through this conversation. If someone you know is hurting and could use the same inspiration and encouragement, please pass this their way. Until next time, ask yourself one question. What's your phase one?